this first session is around choosing and using AI and tech in a law firm. So, as we just heard in that report, we've heard about some of the issues, and so we're looking to provide some practical insights into the way legal firms are using tech and AI. So we've got panelists here with a real broad range of experience, and hopefully they're going to share with us what they've personally seen and heard about how tech is changing legal services. So in particular, this is a session where we hope that there'll be some sort of quick wins and takeaways and practical tips for you. What we're going to do is, as I said earlier, I want to make sure that I allow enough time for you to ask questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask some initial questions. I'm going to ask my very lovely panelists to keep their answers fairly brief so that we do have time to come out to you. So please start thinking about any questions. So let me just briefly introduce my panel. So on your far right, we've got Wallace Briggs. So Wallace is an employment associate at Walker Morris, and as an innovation champion, he's passionate about the emerging legal technology. So we'll see that today. Great. And then Susan Ford, who is head of knowledge at DAC Beechcroft. And Susan's got particular interest in the connection between knowledge management and the advancements in generative AI. Then Paul Saunders, who is Managing Director at Legal Eye, and Paul has many years of expertise in conveyancing and property law. And Chloe Thompson from Whitecap Consulting is part of the highly successful Legal Tech in Leeds initiative. So Chloe's going to bring us some local insight today. So as I say, I'm going to start with a few brief questions, so just so that you can get to know the panel a bit. So this is for all of you, actually, perhaps in that order, if that's okay. So what part is technology playing in your job, and how has it changed it for the better? Wallace.
So I guess my job as an employment lawyer is typically just to do the legal work, but I've got a slightly different element in that as an innovation champion, which is what Walker Morris calls those who have an interest in legal tech, is trying to bridge the gap between our tech teams and our business teams who are looking at these sorts of programs and software and good stuff, and the fee earners who usually don't have a lot of time to understand, to appreciate what the technology can do and how it can be helpful in their role. So I think tech is playing more and more of a role, obviously, and that's how my job title's kind of shifted slightly.
Okay, I like the idea of innovation champion. I think it's finding the people that really want to move forward with it. Susan.
I think advancements in tech are very important to knowledge management. I mean, ultimately, as knowledge experts in our business, what we're trying to do is connect the right bit of information to the right person when they need it. So I think advancements in artificial intelligence are particularly interesting here, because actually if you point your generative AI at your trusted, curated legal knowledge, actually that AI experience can help the way that you do your research, and it can provide a more interactive way of dealing with the research. The key is it is just a starting point to that legal research. Whatever you're doing, whether it's a memo to a colleague or a piece of research or advice to clients or a document for the court, it's just a starting point. So it's remembering the responsibility sits with you. But as a starting point, that AI can be a really interesting one.
And I liked your emphasis on trusted and curated. Paul.
Legal Eye is an external consultancy that works with a number of law firms and therefore sees it in a lens from different environments. But I'm also Colp, an MD of Optima Legal down the road, which obviously is a massive factory organisation, which is purely tech orientated. And also Amity Law, which is in Horwich, which is CLC regulated high street practice. So as we're part of PEXA in the UK, and as such, therefore, we're kind of oversold to by tech all the time, because we see from the volume end, where we're told there are the most amazing things that will solve all our problems, and because we're clearly got reasonably deep pockets, we should buy everything. And then on the high street, we're kind of told, well, you can pass on all these costs to your client. So actually, it's not going to cost you anything to implement these pieces of tech or AI. And actually, we all know that by doing that, all we do is reduce the bottom line for us, because there's a ceiling price for our products. So I think I see it from multiple different lenses, and every single time we see all those points that came out in the research are kind of true for all sides of practice. It doesn't matter whether it's a high street practice or whether it's a large. The information that's out there to make the decisions in relation to the tech that you use is tough, and actually it's really subjective as to what works for you.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Chloe?
Yeah, so I thought I'd answer this question just speaking about the shift that we've seen. So if I think about like when we first started Legal Tech and Leeds in 2022, and Legal Tech and Leeds kind of aims to bring together the legal and tech sectors across Leeds region, we were kind of having to define what we meant by legal tech. And now if we kind of fast forward to the events that we host, the term legal tech is really widely used, and legal tech's really widely adopted now. There's lots of legal tech events happening all up and down the UK. They're growing, they're really well attended. So I think the conversation's definitely moved on and advanced. And also the kind of mindset shift that we've seen at our events as well. So again, when we first started Legal Tech in Leeds, I think law firms in particular were quite apprehensive in terms of kind of being open and sharing some of the projects that they were working on and some of the technology that they were adopting. And I think over time, we've managed to build a community where law firms feel comfortable being transparent and open and honest. And I think that's meant that Legal Tech in Leeds is now built on a kind of foundation of knowledge sharing and education, which I think is more valuable, rather than law firms coming in thinking that they're just feeling like they're just being sold to. And that's thanks to organisations like Walker Morris and DSC Beechcroft, who are both part of Legal Tech in Leeds, and they've been really open and transparent about their projects that they've been working on. So I think there's been a really positive shift, particularly in the last 3 years that we've been running Legal Tech in Leeds.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to dive a little bit deeper now. So Chloe, I think I'll start coming back to you. So you've talked a lot about legal tech and how things have moved on. So what are firms and solicitors sort of telling you now about the way that tech's being used now?
So I think the appetite is definitely there, but I think the experience of how technology is used across law firms definitely varies greatly. So I think with larger law firms, they're a bit more advanced in terms of kind of investment and the infrastructure. So a lot of them have kind of in-house tech and innovation teams, in-house developers, dedicated training programs. So a lot of them kind of are able to build their own proprietary AI tools as well, which means that they don't have some of those kind of data privacy and security concerns. So I think their technology use is a little bit more advanced and strategic potentially. And then when you look at smaller law firms, I think their use is a bit more pragmatic. So I think they're looking at technology solutions that are kind of easy to implement, cost effective, and that solve kind of specific problems like e-signatures or client onboarding platforms, things like that. And I think there's definitely kind of, there's a bit of a barrier there in terms of, I think it was mentioned earlier, that piece around vendor selection and not necessarily have the internal resource to assess what's out there and then implement it across the organisation. So there's definitely a gap, but I think at Legal Geek last week, I think the biggest takeaway for me was that there is an opportunity there for the gap to be closed between SME and large law firms if the smaller law firms are fast followers and kind of embrace the AI revolution that we're in, really. So I think it was a positive story overall from Legal Geek, what I took away.
Yeah, and lots on AI, I gather. Yeah. So talking of AI, Wallace, I'm going to ask you to perhaps do the hard thing, which is to just explain a little bit about generative AI, just for anyone who isn't quite so familiar, and what it is to you and how you use it.
Sure. So, health warning, I am not techie at all, but I've spent time using Gen AI and trying to understand what it is and what it means. And I think ignoring the kind of technical guff. Realistically, what it means is that you've got this large set of data and you can ask questions, you can input certain prompts, you can work with that data to provide you with new and potentially original ways of presenting that data and answering questions that come from that data. I think the challenge, I mean, we've all heard about the challenges of hallucinations where information is spat out that might not necessarily be correct. I think that's becoming less of an issue. People are more aware of it now. I think it's about training your fee earners or whoever is using that Gen AI to understand what prompts they need to put in to get the answers that they want back. But in terms of its use in the legal industry, its scope is massive in terms of saving time for fee earners, but not necessarily just fee earners, in that AI is useful across the board, from AML, KYC, document production. It's got so many versatile uses. And I guess at Walker Morris, what we've tried to do is take a ground-up approach instead of just diving in and buying a platform or a service, is actually trying to understand what problem are we trying to solve first before buying anything, making sure we demo tools, making sure that our individuals that are trying to use them are telling us why they need to use it. Because it's so simple to just buy something and put it in front of someone and say, there you go, save us some money, save us some time. But that's just not the reality, I think. So I think slow and steady is our approach in the whole.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure we'll come on later to talking about some of the sort of the risks and the downfalls. And you talked about hallucinations, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, and perhaps in the later session. But there's a lot of cases around at the moment, aren't there? So I'm sure you're right that hopefully people are more aware. But it's amazing how many seem to slip through. So, Susan, I'm really interested actually in how AI can support knowledge management, because I think that in terms of time saving, this must be a real opportunity. But not everyone in the room has the resource of a big organisation. So what advice would you give for a smaller firm about where to start, and also back to those risks?
I think it's a really good question. I think Wallace's point about going back to basics, actually thinking about the problem that you're trying to solve as your starting point. And then have a conversation with your suppliers. Lots of these suppliers, have a roadmap of things that they're interested in developing over time. Actually, are there any synergies between the problems that you're trying to solve in your business and what they're doing? Are there opportunities for collaboration, for pilots? So I think those are some things that you can think about.
Yeah, thank you. And Paul, conveyancing, I mean, it was probably sort of quite ahead of the game, really, in terms of adopting tech. And I wondered what learning, because you're obviously at the heart of that. So what do you think has been learned in that area that could maybe be applied to different areas of law?
I think it's interesting when Chris talks about the report that is being published, when they're saying that providers are saying that small law firms are not necessarily receptive, small law firms are not necessarily understanding, they don't give them the opportunity to demo. I think there are reasons for that, and I think we have been burnt multiple times, whether it's in historic tech or whether it's in current AI forms, and yet there are massive learnings that we can take from the conveyancing industry. But actually the tech providers, and we are a tech provider in the back of our parent company, we need to take away the fact that actually we have to produce it in a way that is understood by the market that we're selling to, because it is a product and we are selling something. And in the normal environment of sale and purchase, you'd expect the person that's selling something not to be saying to you, you're not good enough and you don't understand what we're trying to sell to you, but actually sell it to you in a way that you understand and actually benefits your business. And I think Wallace's point is, until you know the problem that you are trying to solve, there's actually no point in talking to the tech providers, because they will always solve your problem for you. And that's great. But even going back to when we first introduced case management systems, what came out of the box was probably of very little use to you. What actually resulted was a huge amount of work by the invested fee earners within a practice that developed that system to a point that it became beneficial for everybody else. And actually that's still true of the tech. It's still very true, even of the AI products. And as you say, the database, data and information is key to so many things. And actually, probably the biggest learning that we can take from history is making sure we have a really strong database within our organisation of information and the information we need and we want, because we can draw on that and that will help us to cut down the time. We'll never replace the fee earners, we'll never replace the lawyers, and that's a massive fear, because whatever comes out of, whether it's AI or whether it's any tech, has to have something done with it. And until we look at it, until we check that there are not errors in what has come out, we can't confidently put it out into the market and we can't confidently advise our clients.
It's quite an investment, isn't it, of time for fee earners who are already incredibly stretched. So, yeah, it's seeing the benefit, I guess, of investing that time well.
Just add something. We definitely heard that as well. So we ran 3 SME law firm forums through Legal Tech in Leeds, and I would say there was SME law firms are wanting to innovate and engage in technology and AI. I don't think it's a lack of appetite. I think they're definitely kind of time poor. I'll never forget that somebody there sort of said that I'm an MD, but I'm also trying to unblock a toilet and I'm doing all these things and spin all these plates. And I think that is the reality for some of the smaller practices. So we were kind of exploring potentially a solution of kind of coming together to increase buying power with the kind of technology vendors, and what that looks like in practical terms, we're not too sure yet, but I think it's definitely something that we'd like to explore with SME law firms.
Yeah, and it's finding those champions in each firm, which doesn't necessarily need to be the person doing everything. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to ask you all a question, which is, what is the most impactful tool or piece of tech that you've used and why? I don't mind whoever wants to dive in on that.
Go first.
Yeah.
It's funny because as my role as innovation champion, which sounds really pompous, it's not, I've been telling my team for about a year, maybe longer, that there's this brilliant document automation tool that we've got that we've been working on, and it's fantastic. And all we need to do is use it more, and all of the glitches and all of the bugs and all of the issues that the fee earners have with it will fall away. IT will help us fix it. Fantastic. And last night, about 9 p.m, I was doing some work and I had to do a settlement agreement. I thought, I'll use this document automation tool. I'll show everyone how easy it is. And after about 30 minutes of tinkering, I thought, this is not working. I understand. I felt like such a hypocrite. When that's fixed, that will become the most impactful tool that we have. I think that's in our team. I think in the firm, Gen AI is going to change things. I think that's fair to say. Don't know how, but probably positively in terms of time saving and cost saving for the client. But I think one piece of tech, and I think this is kind of like BBC in that we can't say that we prefer one over the other, but there's one piece of tech called Definely, which there are other providers that do the same thing. Allows you to check definitions in a document, allows you to check your references, all of those sorts of things. That, as a really basic Word add-on, saves us lots and lots of time. And it's work that maybe a trainee or a paralegal might do in terms of checking clause references are accurate, but it can be done at a few clicks of a button, which I think is a super powerful tool for not a huge investment in terms of having to set up different databases and all those different things. I think that's probably my takeaway.
Yeah, I think in the here and now, some of those simple ones can really make the big difference, can't they? Susan?
Yeah. I'm really interested in how AI can support that legal research, but actually a really good search engine just to get the right information when you need it and it's not easy actually. A good search engine actually depends on that trusted content underneath. But actually, that's hugely beneficial for knowledge, definitely.
Thank you. Paul?
I'm going to give a bit of political answer to it, but I will give some names of products that I've seen that are brilliant, but as I think I started this out, it's really subjective. It is about what you want to achieve and where you want to go with it. There are some in fact, they're all probably pretty incredible in their own right, products out there, but they're only any use to you if they actually deliver a result that is something that's useful to you. So, I mean, source of funds is a huge area for us in terms of Legal Eye and trying to help people understand the relevance and the significance. And Analytics have a great product which really can help. But again, it generates information which, if you don't do anything with it, then actually it's of no use to you. So again, it's about down to the management of your firms. So all of this, however much of a protagonist we are of AI or tech or product, it's about how we run our firms, and it actually does come back to the top. And if you don't have the right approach and we don't understand the people in our organisation and those that are the tech-driven individuals, there are also another group of people that will not be tech-driven, and they will fight every single turn in relation to product. Now, if that is the environment you've got, then maybe tech's not the right thing for you to have. But there are things out there things like Orbital Witness that make a massive difference from a leasehold perspective. Collaborative conveyancing, I've got products. You can go on and on and on out there in the marketplace with stuff. But A, they'll cost you. B, people will tell you can pass it on, and maybe you can or you can't. But actually, it's having a strategy internally. And these kind of environments where you can share knowledge and information, this is non-competitive really as far as all the firms are concerned, because you'll use it in very different ways. And the achievable results will be very different for each one of you. But actually, it's great to share. So if people have got products here that do work for them, then absolutely share it. It may not work for somebody else, but hey, it's worth working with, and it's worth actually trying to get a demo of it if somebody will do it.
Yeah, so perhaps we can get some of that sharing in the breaks, and I have a feeling a lot of people want to ask you for more information. So yeah, and Chloe.
Yeah, so I think I've got two, and this is very much from my work in consulting. So the first one is a tool that we use where you can upload multiple large documents, and it will read through all of those documents and summarise them and pull out kind of key insights that you're looking for and key words, essentially. So that's really useful because that saves a lot of time doing that kind of extensive market research, reading those market industry reports, white papers, etc. And then the second one is, again, through a lot of our projects through consulting, we do a lot of stakeholder interviews, and typically that would have meant recording those interviews and having a junior or a consultant then transcribing those interviews word for word, which can take a really long time. And when you've got lots and lots of interviews, it can take lots of hours. So we have a tool now that can help us automate that. And again, that can also summarise the transcript and pick out key themes as well. So we find that really, really, really helpful. So I think those are probably my two.
Great. Okay, so hopefully a few ideas there. Now, I am conscious I promised you an hour ago that this would be interactive, and you've not had any opportunities to ask questions at all. So I do have more questions, but I'm going to see if anyone has any questions at the moment for our panel.
Hi, good morning. I just wanted to ask, I mean, we use Outlook at our firm. Are there any AI apps or any integrations that you've come across with Outlook that can make our life easier?
Anything to help?
We, in terms of pure Outlook, I don't think we've got anything that springs to mind, but Copilot as a Microsoft Office 365 add-in is just a couple of clicks away from Outlook, and you can, I think you can direct the tools to work with each other, and Copilot is Gen AI, so it will scour not only the internet, but if you input the right data from your Outlook systems, it can help kind of use that stuff to give you good stuff, which is, I think, a technical term. But if you if you look into Copilot, I think we had a rollout. I'm looking to the issue. Yeah, I think we had a rollout a couple of weeks ago of our Copilot system, and it is really powerful. Really, really good stuff.
Yeah, we've also utilised Copilot, but it depends what you want to get out of your Outlook. So obviously you can get it to link with your case management systems, and it can automatically put it into the history and draw it from that, which is massively advantageous rather than people having to drag and drop documents and things like that. And I think Copilot is certainly something that is really helpful. But if anybody's got disability challenges within their organisations, there are readback facilities. So if you've got dyslexic individuals, actually really, really simple stuff, but the readback facilities that can be gained within Outlook or with Word and things like that, actually they can be game-changing for certain individuals.
So this one's for Wallace. I'm really keen to hear about the innovation champions and how that works in practice, because my experience is that it is about people and how they react. And I think Paul mentioned, some people hate it, some people love it. How does it work in practice? I mean, we're a lot smaller than you. We're about 70 employees, several offices spread out, kind of market town. And we get some people who are interested, and we get some people who will throw 1,000 potholes in the road, if you like. But do you get kind of your target reduced? Do you get training? Do you work with a team? Do you report into board? Do you report to an IT director? I'm just curious in practice how it works.
Yeah. So the innovation champion team, is comprised of people who have not been picked. They've obviously nominated themselves from each of the departments in the firm, who have been asked to assist in not only trialing and testing software, but helping to roll that out to their team members, because ultimately we as fee earners will have a better understanding of what we need and how that can be put into practice. So one of the things, and I think where we're quite lucky is that we have specific people who have been hired to be kind of heading that team and are, the people who speak to the software providers and that sort of stuff. But in terms of getting people involved, one of the things that the team is trialing at the moment is effectively a points-based system where if you hear of a new tech that's on the marketplace that someone else is using, or you've attended a conference like this, or you've demoed something to your team, you're awarded basically points, which will eventually be some kind of probably non-cash prize. But I think the incentive doesn't come from that. It's more that if you are passionate and you have people in your team that are passionate, you hope that it rubs off and they can share their enthusiasm to say, listen, this is a really great tool that I've trialed. So, for example, the settlement agreement document automation that I was talking about, typically it can take someone, if it's a complicated settlement agreement, between maybe 2 to even 3 hours to do a full settlement agreement. And this tool that we've started trialing can cut that down to 20 minutes, which is a massive saving. Getting people on board and trialing and using the software effectively falls to me and the other innovation champion in the department, because we have to show everyone why it's so great. So if you have got people who are keen, if you can incentivize them and say, listen, if it's about reducing your billables or however you frame that, hopefully their enthusiasm will spur other people into taking up arms as well. But yeah, it's really difficult.
I think that AI champion is a really good one to have, and I think it can have small firms and larger firms as well. It's really bridging the gap either between the fee earning colleagues and the supplier, or the fee earning colleagues and the innovation team. But it's that bridge, isn't it? And it's what you articulated about actually, this is the difference it can make to what you do on a day-to-day basis. So it's making it real for someone.
Yeah, and I suppose if you think of it this way, and I mean, we all have, I imagine, hundreds of emails a day, a couple of meetings a day. If you're invited to another meeting, by the tech team or whatever, and you think, I've got so much on to do today. You'll attend the meeting and then you'll probably go, right, cool, on to my next piece of work. Whereas if someone that you work with in your team is saying, listen, this is helping me at the moment, this is helping us, they're probably more likely to listen, which is just supposedly a harsh reality of life, but it's true.
Yeah, great, thank you.
Given the session is about how to choose and then use AI, if we're making an assumption that that's to help the law firm grow and prosper, I'd like to hear more on two interrelated issues, which essentially are how does that then drive an improved client experience, and how does it then drive improvement in well-being for staff and help them to deliver that improved client experience? What's your views on that issue?
Great question, thank you. So, how does it drive improved client experience and well-being of staff?
One of the, in terms of your staff's experience, I'm going to talk from a legal research perspective, but actually there's something, if you've got a hybrid system of working, for example, there's actually something very reassuring about using AI to help you do that legal research, because if you're working remotely, you don't have that ability to turn to your colleague and ask a question. So actually that ability to, to have that conversational experience, obviously checking it at the end, but as a gateway to, one of the ways I use AI in legal research is I think I know the answer to something. So it's just a way of just checking, actually, that I have got that answer right. But that speeds up that process rather than looking through a long document, for example. So, all of that improvement, that speed, then translates into your client experience, I think.
I think directly on the client experience, most people that I talk to, they want time. And the thing that they don't have at the moment is, because of all of this piece, they don't have the time to focus on their clients and make sure that the client is receiving the attention that the client wants. We saw on that research again that the client wants more tech, wants more innovation stuff. I question that sometimes. Actually, in our industry, I don't necessarily think across all of our work types the client is looking for a technology answer. They're looking for your time. That's what they're paying for. That's why they come to us as lawyers, as professionals. The tech should enable us to give them that time. So if you can utilize the tech to buy you time back, whether it's doing a settlement agreement in 20 minutes rather than in 2 hours, or whether it is collecting data. So we have methods of onboarding clients that collect information and data that's a lot more valuable to us when we're ongoing with the transaction, and we don't have to ask them the questions again, that actually allows us to spend time working with them and getting the results they want.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was just going to say a final point on the well-being topic. I think technology can definitely offer some solutions, but it can also be really damaging to work-life balance. I think all firms just have to be really careful that you're not expecting employees to be answering emails at 9 p.m. at night, and that you are respectful of their time still, even though everybody's working remotely, because I think there's definitely some risks around that. I think you hear that across the legal sector especially, those issues around work-life balance. I think that's a really important thing to be aware of.
I guess the other thing is you'll have your enthusiasts and your champions, but there'll be other people that the whole thing's a bit terrifying. So, not losing them and looking out for them and looking after them as well.
Just to build on Paul's point about well-being, if you've got some tool that automates your AML or KYC experience, I can guarantee you every lawyer will be much happier not having to deal with that directly. And there's your well-being point already, improving your day, not having to deal with all the hoops and speaking to all the different people to try and get that sorted. If that's automated, that's a huge win for me.
Thank you. So this is just a bit of a question for everybody. So you've talked a lot about sort of the type of technology that is that we can utilise and we can use in a positive way. I just wanted to ask whether you have had experience, or you know of somebody who's had experience where using technology or using generative AI particularly has gone a little bit wrong, and whether it's as a result of somebody who's been reluctant to use it, or somebody who has been using generative AI in their personal life and in their day-to-day life, and then has used it incorrectly in the legal profession.
Yeah, and we've certainly, I'm sure if you've seen the legal press, you'll have seen there's quite a few examples of that, but in terms of case citation. But any other examples?
Part of what we do is file reviews within Legal Eye, and we've seen generated file notes that make absolutely no sense. And the advice that's gone out on the back of that also makes no sense, and clearly hasn't been read, and has then formed a complaint. So part of what we do is look at complaints, and the complaint, 100% valid, somebody has just taken the outcomes. And then other examples, conveyancing source funds, really prime example. They've utilised a great provider, done nothing with the information, ticked a box and said, yeah, we've sorted that, and actually there is every red flag under the sun in the results of that source of funds documentation. So I think we'll all probably have examples of that, but I guess because we work across multiple law firms, we do see an awful lot of people who rely on their tech, and maybe that's not such a great idea unless you are 100% confident.
And always checking the output.
Yeah, absolutely.
Responsibility point, it's remembering there's still a point to lawyers. This is, the responsibility sits with us. It's still our responsibility to check it.
Yeah.
Actually, that's why we got into law in the first place, is that nuance, analysis, that's important.
I think that's the fear thing. I get told this a lot, this is going to do away with our jobs. This is going to replace all of us, particularly in our factory environment type firm. That is the furthest thing from the truth. Actually, it may possibly allow us to do a bit more volume. I don't know the answer to that always, but it may allow us to do things a bit quicker, a bit smarter. It may cut down the hours that people are working. Perhaps Wally won't have to do 9 o'clock settlement agreements, but it's that's the objective, not anything else.
If you're using a tool that isn't made for your firm and it's a public access LLM like ChatGPT, there's a real risk that if you're inputting confidential information there, we don't know where it's going. I don't think there's I don't think we've got a full answer to what that looks like yet. So I think just not an anecdote, but just be aware that whatever you do put in the public Gen AI tools could potentially be going somewhere that you don't want your client information going.
And that,
Yeah, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say that goes back to the top. Make sure you've got an AI policy. Make sure you understand what is being used within your organisation and what people are allowed to use. So a good example, ChatGPT. You have your own positioning on it, but maybe it's one you should be really cautious about. So yeah, absolutely have an AI policy.
And if you are new to all of this, there is some good guidance out there. I mean, we produced a risk outlook. It was probably the autumn before last, I think, wasn't it? But it explains it all, explains those risks, and very much touches on things like that. So yeah, ChatGPT, yeah, use it for your marketing. Don't use it for your client information, I think. Yeah. A question just there.
Am I on? Oh, yeah. My question actually follows nicely on about that from that. So what have you done about policies and training for your staff? Because, as you said, AI models can be bullied a little bit, and you can put the question in, they'll come out with an answer, and you'll say, I'm not sure that's right. And they'll come back and go, oh, you're right, that's wrong. And so what training have you provided for your staff as well?
Policies and training.
We've kind of set out training on specific tools as opposed to just general AI training. I think that's the best approach for that, because each tool has its own risks and its own rewards. Where there's, and I think we do have a general kind of AI / legal tech policy in that it will apply to everything we do and touch every part of our job in some way. Sorry?
What does that policy say?
Or off verbatim? Not entirely sure verbatim.
Kind of
but,
things might be in a policy.
I think that the main points are typically that it is a tool, it's not a full answer. We should always be careful of what we're inputting. Even if we're using a closed system, which is where you're inputting data that's not being disseminated to the internet or whatever that might look like, there's an element of, can you do the job? Can you get the answer you need without spelling out, someone's date of birth and their home address and things like that? But generally, I think the best approach would be to tackle each problem as it comes, because they're all going to be different. Using a document automation, using Gen AI, using a search system has its own challenges, so you can't particularly train for all of them.
I think you've got to think about the culture in your organisation and what messages resonate with your colleagues. But the big legal publishing houses will have guidance actually as a starting point to give you the direction of what your AI policies can look like if you need a starter.
Okay, and Paul.
Clear, simple examples of things would be, you don't allow the use of ChatGPT on your internal systems. You will ring fence perhaps if you're a small office, a PC in the building that can utilise some forms of generative AI product that is useful. You might say Copilot's fine, but you are quite prescriptive in terms, to start with, as to what people can and can't do. You may actually flex it once people become that much more aware and utilising it safely. But I think keep it tight at the outset.
Keep it simple as well. You don't want a big manual. You want this guidance to be really quickly digestible.
Yeah.
I think it's that understanding point as well, though. Actually make sure that Wallace's explanation of what AI is at the first place is known within your organisation, because we bandy this around, and actually none of us had heard of ChatGPT from November 22, early 23. So this is all really new for everybody. That I think is really important, that people just actually know what it is.
I was just interested, we've got a few juniors in our office, and we're very mindful that actually, even just sort of writing articles, it's all an opportunity to learn. And if something is produced through ChatGPT or Copilot, nothing sensitive data-wise, but we're conscious that there are missing opportunities potentially in their actual learning and understanding. So I just wondered what your take was on that, because we're not trying to create work for the sake of doing work and have them spend hours doing non-chargeable work, but equally, I do think there's a value in sort of finding that balance. I just wondered what your views were.
Yeah, training is likely to change with all these time savings. So how do you give your trainees the best experience?
Should I have a stab at that?
Yeah.
I think my personal view is I'd start them doing exactly what they're doing now in terms of writing the article. AI has a use there, actually. You put the article into the AI. Are there any slants that you've missed? Is there anything else, another way of looking at it? But actually the starting point is their legal research, their understanding.
I think there's a big piece to learn from young people, and I think we can't overlook that. They understand these products better than we probably do, and they are actually aware of the risks. So as long as we're keeping them on the straight and narrow, and they are still learning the skill sets that they need to do the job. But that job is going to look different in 5 years' time. And if they don't learn about AI and products and tech now, actually not creating the best person that they can be in the future. So I think you have to release the reins slightly as well. And it's a really difficult balance. But actually they will come into your organisation knowing far more about this than we probably ever will.
Just a general question in respect of, in your experience, what's the average lead time for research, adaptation, implementation of tools? Just to give an idea.
Wow.
That's really difficult.
Well, perhaps some examples, if it's a tool for know your client, roughly.
If you are looking at an ID product or a KYC boxed product, I think they can come in really quickly. I think you can bring those in and you can have a really satisfactory, they're really tried and tested. I suspect, just a quick show of hands, how many people use an automated ID system? Fairly large proportion. talk to other people, but they're really, really well ingrained. But then if you move to something slightly more challenging, maybe the orbital westerners type products that are really AI orientated, then we introduced that into a high street practice, and it took us 2 months to have it embedded, running, and to be absolutely compulsory, and everybody had to utilise it. It's not a great answer, but piece of string.
Yeah, I think the other side of the coin is that it depends so much on uptake as well from within the organisation, in that you can have, as you say, a product out of the box, ready to go, but if your staff aren't willing to give it that chance, and you don't make it compulsory, which again is a culture question, do you do that, do you not? It's not necessarily the easiest to shift onto something that is automated, for example, or is Gen AI, because it's so alien. It comes back to your point in that there might be people who have, and I think I might be right in saying this, that I think in unis now, it's becoming part of the law program that when you're being taught, you are in some respects being taught how to use AI to get the right answers. So you might have people coming into this who are really ready to go, and others that are very opposed to it. And I think the biggest challenge that we've faced is not so much the technical aspect of getting products in place, it's the people aspect of getting people excited.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we bought things in, and 6 months later, where it was compulsory and everybody was utilising it, 6 months later, only half of them are then using it because they've actually decided unilaterally they don't like it. You have to start the whole process again in that situation.
Paul, I'm sure there'll be a great deal of relief in the room when people hear you say that, in your view at least, AI isn't here to replace lawyers. Presumably you would say that it has the possibility to have a much greater impact on the jobs of legal support staff. And how do you think the landscape might look in 5 or 10 years' time in terms of the numbers of people that law firms need to employ going forward?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and I think it applies to lawyers the same. I don't think we should divide our businesses out, but I don't think that it will replace our support teams. I think they will change. I think actually from a career progression point of view, it's a massively exciting opportunity for them. There are some in there that don't want to progress and they're very happy in what they're doing. That's great, and there will always be space for those individuals. But actually, for a large portion of them, actually they are looking at their appraisals and saying, what's next? Well, actually, this gives us the opportunity to give them what's next, particularly in our environment here in Leeds, where we've got an awful lot of that categorisation. We have had a real talent drain because they've gone somewhere else to get something better. And we couldn't give them that because we didn't have that opportunity. But actually, the work that we're doing around AI and improving that piece, the administrative piece, is enabling us to create an academy, which is enabling us then to take people through a process, which, our goal in that is to take them from an administrative process as far as they want, because we can move them to a fully fledged conveyancer in Amity if we want to. So for me, I think it's a huge opportunity for those people.
Paul, can I ask a related question? Because you said that you didn't think that we'd need fewer lawyers, they might just be doing less work. What about firms that don't take advantage of AI? Do you think they'll be disadvantaged?
This is always a really bad threat, isn't it? Tech providers use this all the time as, if you don't adopt these things, you're going to be left behind. I think the better way of looking at it is actually this levels up the playing field. So between a very large organisation and a high street organisation, historically we've always had a resource challenge. We've always had a problem. Can we compete in their environment? Can we compete on price? Can we compete on skill set? Even in the recruitment market, can we employ people that are of the same calibre? Actually, I think tech and AI used wisely and cleverly within small practices gives you back time, it gives you additional skill sets, and it does allow you to compete more fairly in a marketplace where skills are on a level, and therefore as a consequence actually the high street could win. And we look at that results again, and where 78% of those firms are the smaller firms in the structure of law firms. Everybody has to listen to that, because yes, we look at the flagships and the big organisations. I was a partner in a 1,000-staffed firm, and we considered ourselves pretty bulletproof, I think, at that time. I don't think we can now. I don't think you can, because I think there are specialist organisations using tech incredibly well.
Hi, I was wondering if you could give some examples of tools that help to extract key pieces of information from like a document or a contract. So some of the things, we get a high volume of contracts and you just want key piece of information for auditing or compliance, things like that.
Other tools are available, but there's tools such as Kira, which is really good for that. It's effectively it scans a document, and then it will pull out specific provisions and clauses that you're looking for. And I think you can get to the stage where you can train it so that it knows what you're going to be looking for before you ask for it, because you do so much of that volume work, it might be, or however that looks. And I guess this is the whole point of Gen AI, in that you've got specific tools that do that already in the marketplace. But with Gen AI, it's meant to be, if you get the right services, a kind of a catch-all, in that you should theoretically be able to take a large amount of documents and put it into a chatbot, whether it's Copilot or Curvestone or whatever it is, and ask for it to summarise. If you want to know what the termination clause in these 20 documents, it should be able to pull that out for you, flag where they are, and then at that point, and this is where it differs from most tools, be able to say, please can you put that into a table for me in an email that's written in English language for an MD to be sent tomorrow. Can you automate that process? I then don't have to do anything else. You should check it, obviously, but I think it depends which kind of tool you want there, because you go the Gen AI way and it gives you all the bells and whistles, but if you're just looking for something like Kira, then it's more of just a tool add-on than a whole solution.
This is a question for everyone, but we've talked a lot about different kinds of tools that are available potentially online or that are trying to be sold to law firms. But how far do you think law firms should invest in developing AI, small language models internally, especially because that might provide an opportunity to kind of circumnavigate the data protection issues. So you're using a model that you've trained yourself that performs a particular function. Do you think that that's something that firms should be looking into more?
I think if you've got the resource to do it, then that's great. But I think in reality, a lot of particularly smaller firms just don't. So I think they'd definitely be looking at more off-the-shelf AI tools. And a lot of them do have the necessary security certifications, absolutely. But I think you then need to do the proper due diligence in terms of choosing that and making sure you understand what data is being stored, where it's being stored, what's being done with it, and that your client is happy with that. So I think in an ideal world, we'd all love to probably build our own AI tools. I know we probably would at Whitecap as well, but I think obviously you've got your limitations. You have to work within that and just make sure that you're acting responsibly.
You have to have a level of enthusiasm in this, and actually sometimes it's about knowing what you've got within your firms. Very often we're really blind to what the resources and the skill sets that we have within our organisations, because these aren't questions that we've historically asked. Actually, you may find you've got people in your business that actually their hobby is around AI and their hobby is around language models. And if you have, then that's gold dust. And yeah, we're investing in building our own, but actually the skill sets of those people that I have been surrounded with is phenomenal. And for you to build one without those skill sets, I think is probably quite risky.
One there and then one here, and then that might be our last two, I think.
Thank you for all this useful information. The question is debatable. If we don't trust a lot of AI tools, why don't SRA develop a reliable or more trusted AI tool, and that can be separated between law firms with an annual subscription fees or something like that? This is the first question. And the second question, based on the information I have heard, using AI in law firm, it's not a win-win situation. So it might be take risk or lose the chance because of the cybersecurity and data protection and all this kind of stuff. Thank you.
Well, I think the SRA is a regulator, and we certainly don't have the skill set to build, and that isn't what we'd be in the business of doing. I mean, indeed, we don't even endorse, we wouldn't endorse products either, but ultimately it's about the responsibility of the solicitors and the law firms, and that's our job to provide that. But we'll touch on that, I think, a little bit in our next session as well. But on the second question...
I think you're right to voice the concerns and the risks. And I think if you've got to that point that you have an awareness of the risks and the concerns, then that actually you're quite a long way down the road, because you will approach any of the products or things that are out there from a point of questioning. And I think that's a really sensible position to work from.
To add to that, I think because we are largely aware of the risks here, it's not something that's impossible to combat, and actually you can get a handle on the risks quite easily if you have the AI policy, which makes the issues of hallucinations basically obsolete. If you know you're checking your work and you've got people who are appropriately trained and know their sector, then you should hopefully pick up those issues. Data protection, if you've told people not to put specific information into the model, then you've eliminated that risk. And you can kind of go through that with each of those points, but it's more straightforward than not knowing the risks. And there are loads of things that we don't know the risks of, but we still do them. So I think we're in quite a privileged position in terms of using this sort of product.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say, the suppliers should have a well-rehearsed playbook as answers to these questions about tech, etc. So, it shouldn't be novel questions. If suppliers are selling to lawyers and the regulated sector, actually, they should be prepared for, the sort of questions you're asking about data information security. And that's actually why networks, like Legal Tech in Leeds, is really useful for suppliers, because it helps to demystify the sort of questions, the concerns that lawyers and the regulated sector have.
Yeah. Okay.
I think don't forget your training as well. We're trained lawyers. We're just trained to be analytical. We're trained to look at things from a particular perspective. This is no different. We should still question, and we should still make sure we feel we have the right answers or go to the right place to get the answers.
Okay. Final question, I think. Thanks.
Thank you. In every field of life, the AI is the biggest threat. Why not SRA, government and law society should ask to do reforms and introduce regulated products, which will help the profession and also the regulator? My second question is that how the SRA and law society will make sure that fairness in the profession is given, because if we will compare, small businesses will be affected, because if you will see the big supermarkets have taken away the corner shops. So will be fair for the small businesses where the bigger firm will invest a lot of money, huge invest of money, and smaller firm, when they go to the banks or to the institution, they have a very lesser opportunity. I think it is also will be unfair for the smaller organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, obviously, we'll talk about this a little bit more later, because I've got an SRA colleague joining me on the next panel. But we're not about stifling innovation, and we can't stop the market. But what we do want to do, and what this event is hopefully contributing to, is supporting and helping small firms with guidance and with information and with networks to help to encourage them. And so that's really our approach on it. But happy to pick up and have a chat in the break. But I don't want to keep everyone from their refreshments. So. First of all, can you just join me in thanking our panellists? Thank you.